Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our last talk of the day. Please come and grab your seats and have a chance to sit down and listen to David Pleasance and Trevor Dickinson, who are going to give us a bit of an update on what they've been working on of late, as well as taking some of your questions. So, chaps, over to you.
Hello, Dave.
Hello, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad.
Good.
Long time no see.
Yes, it has been a very long time, and I've missed you.
Yeah. Now, what were you going to say about our, they leave the best to last? They leave the best to last?
What I was going to say is that, as you can see, we're actually Bros.
Well, he says Bros, I say Statler and Waldorf.
That sounds right too.
Yeah, that joke didn't go down so well as I thought it would. Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls, and sirs and ladies, if there are any. I'm going to start off by talking about the progress, or should I say the lack of progress, in me writing my new book. For those of you who don't know, my new book is it's basically what would have happened to Commodore and Amiga if Colin Proudfoot, who was my co-MD at Commodore UK, if he and I had not been cheated out of our management buyout, what we would have done with Commodore and Amiga. The book is called Dare to Dream, and I think you can understand why. Now, that book, which I started really quite some time ago, it hasn't made very much progress, and there's a number of reasons for that. The main reason is that I've been through a period of extreme fatigue. I sit down and start to write, and I have to have a snooze. That snooze turns into 2 hours, and then I go back to, and I haven't got the thread anymore of writing the book. It's really quite difficult. And I can also add to that, writing the book in conjunction with Dave Haney, because what we're writing about is the new technology that we would have developed and the progress that we have made. And to be honest with you, Dave Haney admits himself he's terribly, terribly slow at responding to emails. Mind you, his house was, I think, he bought a house in Florida recently, and I believe it was in the path of extreme winds or something, so he has been a little bit busy. Anyway, the good news about the book is that the beginning of April, from the 3rd to the 7th of April, I was at the VCF East celebration in New Jersey, in a place called Wall Township, and I met most of my heroes, who are the guys that actually built the Amiga. And although I've known them for years, I've never met them. And it was for me, it was absolutely phenomenal. Now, the good news is that I asked all of them if they would be prepared to write a few lines for my book about what they would have done with the technology, 94, 95, 96, so on, as new technology was developed, what they would have done with it in terms of Commodore, the Amiga, and certainly the project known as Ombre, which for some reason ESCOM didn't even look at. So anyway, the good news is that even though I'm slow with the book, I think it will be a better product at the end. And those of you who have bought my books in the past, you'll know I do deliver a quality product. And certainly what Trevor and I delivered with the Vultures to Vampires trilogy, you know the amount of work that went into that. Particularly this man, he put a huge amount of work into it. So anyway, it will be a good book, and I hope you'll stick with me. I hope you'll stand by me while I get it finished.
Dave, I actually met someone today who's actually read the 3 books. So yeah, he's down there, thank you. And I was really pleased that I didn't tell him I'd written it first. I just waited to see whether he liked them. And he did say he liked them without me even prompting him, so that was really good. I'm actually writing a book as well, David.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Mine's a novel, and it's about AI and mind control and compliance. We can all relate to that, can't we? And there's a little bit of naughtiness in it as well. I quite like that bit. Anyway, so yeah, I'm writing a book, but I'm also involved in another PowerPC hardware project, and it's called the Merari board by some Dutch developers. And the good thing about this board is that it's a next generation Amiga. It already runs MorphOS beta, and hopefully in the not too distant future, it will run Amiga OS 4. And the good thing about it really is that because the work, the non-recurring engineering work, which is usually really expensive, 100,000, 150,000, has been done by talented volunteers who are in the business, that's not being added to the cost of the board. So the board hardware, at least, is going to be a lot less expensive. So fingers crossed, maybe late this year, maybe next year, there'll be another next generation Amiga that'll run MorphOS, Amiga OS 4, and Linux. So if you like next generation, then look out for that one. Of course, you can still buy the Amiga 1 X5000 and the A1222 as well, and you buy that now.
So, Trevor, tell me, what's the situation with Amiga 4.0?
4.0 was released about 10 years ago.
No, what did you say then? I thought you said 4.0.
No, I said Amiga OS 4.
Oh,
4.
OS 4, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I am such a dumbass, I know.
That's all right. It's all right. The current version of Amiga's, wait for it, Amiga OS 4.1, update 2, final edition. Don't ask me why.
That sounds like a documentary series waiting to happen, doesn't it?
Update 3 is being worked on at the moment, and there will be an update 3, I think, from Hyperion probably within the next month or two.
Okay. No, well, that's good news.
And MorphOS 3.2 is currently running on the Merari board, a beta version of.
So when is the new project you're working on, when's that bound to be released?
Which one? The Merari board?
Yeah.
That's not to me because I'm not manufacturing it. But I reckon, these things take time. The first 5 prototypes have been manufactured. They're all up and running now. There's been some issues, but they're all up and running. Another small production run will be done for another prototypes, fix a few issues. And after that, it's all down to money, timing, scheduling.
Have you got any idea what sort of retail price it'll be?
No idea because I'm not controlling it, but I would say that compared to other PowerPC boards, I would think the retail price, the cost for manufacture is probably about half.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and with no NRE added, so it means the overall price will be lower.
Good. As long as they're not too greedy.
They won't be, no. Well, the guys that have developed it, they're enthusiasts. They want cheaper hardware out there.
Right.
But
don't we all?
But then you've got to add, you've got to add all the other things. The case, the graphics card, the memory, the Amiga OS 4 or MorphOS enhancer if it's OS 4, things like that.
Right.
So it all adds up. And then you've got to have the support from the company that's supplying it. And that's not free.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course.
So it all adds up. But I'm quite pleased I'm very pleased that we've actually got something like this coming along.
Ah, sounds excellent. Okay, has anybody got any questions they'd like for us? Come on, there must be somebody. Yes.
So it's a bit of a sideline question, but I'm just saying, as a Trevor and David show, you've been together quite a while as a double act, and I just want you to tell us a few experiences that you were allowed to talk about your journey, writing together, being at shows, especially. For example, in Poland and places like this, and if there's any little snippets of stories you can tell about your journey together and why it's been a good partnership and that you've been able to produce the books that you've done with the Vampire trilogy. So, you know, just something like that.
Well, first time I met David was probably in Amsterdam for the Amiga 30 in Amsterdam. And Dave had not been, I'll let Dave tell the story, but Dave had not been involved in the computers since he left Commodore. So he was quite surprised to turn up in Amsterdam and think, hey, you're David Pleasance. So that was great. But the Polish one you're talking about, we had turned up in Poland at the AMI party in Helm.
Yes.
Helm.
Helm.
And
Helm.
It was early morning, about 9 o'clock, and we'd like a drink. And we thought coffee would be good. No, it was a pint of beer, wasn't it?
It started off.
So from 9 o'clock in the morning till, I don't know what time I went to bed, about 2 in the next morning, we were drinking non-stop all day. Not because we wanted to, because they forced it on us, didn't they, Dave?
No, we weren't allowed not to have an empty glass. Absolutely not allowed.
And they had this green stuff called Stalin's Tears, which was a homemade vodka. It was green and strange.
Luminous.
But when you drank it, one of those and any resolve went, didn't it, Dave?
Yeah.
But I went to bed about 2 o'clock, and I thought, and they gave us a room in the place, and we were sharing the room. I went to bed at 2, I woke up at 3, and he wasn't there. He'd gone back out.
Has been known. Mind you, I don't drink anymore, and that's the truth. I've stopped for a year and a half now, but that's another story.
I'm drinking enough for both of us, it's all right.
That's
right?
good. Now, the next part of the Helm story is that the following morning they wanted to do a video of us. And guess what? They took us to a pub. It was about 10 in the morning, I think. We were both mega hungover. And anyway, they sat us down and they said, what are you going to, they said to Trevor, what are you going to say? And Trevor said, there's no easy way to say this, he said, but I'm an Amiga-holic. And at which point I immediately said yes, and I was his dealer. And that sort of caused a big furor. Everybody laughed about that. But that's why I use that on, I've got my own trademark stuff as proud to be an Amiga-holic. That's where that came from.
Well, it's because my first Amiga was probably bought when my first Commodore was a Commodore PET. It was probably bought when you were in Commodore UK. Right. And if it wasn't, I definitely bought Amigas when you were in Commodore UK. Yeah. So that's why he was the dealer, because I was the user.
That's true, yeah. Because I was recruited by Commodore to sell the Commodore PET into the retail market. They wanted to start a whole new market because obviously they were selling into businesses and so on. And the crazy thing is that I was there, I think, about 6 or 7 weeks when we got a message from Commodore International, we're not making any more PETs. And I'd been recruited specifically to sell them. So I knew immediately Commodore had no business plan. And I thought to myself, this is a car crash, because if you haven't got a business plan, you know, what on earth's happening? I will tell you a funny story. It's a bit rude, but I hope you don't mind. It wasn't in the book, so I'll tell you. Mehdi Ali, the famous Mehdi Ali, who was, people said to me, describe Mehdi Ali. He was a Pakistani Danny DeVito. That's what he looked like, and that's exactly what he was. Anyway, he was a very strange man, very little intellect, if I'm honest. But even though he never used to praise Commodore UK, he always said Germany was outselling us, and I knew it wasn't. But even despite all of that, he sent his son to us for a couple of years, basically to learn the business ropes, which I think says an awful lot about how much he must have thought of us. Anyway, the story I want to tell you is about his son, Mehdi Ali Jr., as a very straight, he had very little sense of humor. But anyway, on his leaving night, I left it up to my guys to do something special. And so they said they're going to get a strippergram. What they actually got was a grannygram. And this was the most revolting thing you have ever seen in your life. Anyway, she started to take her clothes off, and it was a horrible sight. Anyway, she then turned around, I hope there's no girls listening, she then turned around and said, "You haven't seen nothing yet, wait till you get a whiff of my rancid muff." At which point, Mary Ali Jr. just died. I mean, it was an awful thing to say. But it was so funny because nobody was expecting that, you know. It was really, really crazy.
Dave, this is a family show, you know?
I know it's a family, but we're all a family, aren't we? Go on, your turn. Pardon? Fantasize? No, you must be joking.
Well, we're at the right age now to fantasize for it, okay? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, right, yeah.
A little story. We got Amiga 40 this year, fantastic time. And Amiga 30 was in the States and in Netherlands and Germany, actually.
Yeah, Germany, yeah.
Brilliant shows. Just after Amiga 30, the following year, unfortunately, Dave Needle, one of the original Amiga developers, died. And so I went out to California and stayed with R.J. Michael and his family. And it was a fascinating time because R.J.'s like the Energizer Bunny. You switch him on, switch him off. And I got to see him in both modes, on and off. And he's a really great person, right? But we were the following week, his wife wasn't happy, I could tell, that me and another guy was staying at the house. Because the following week, they were going to demolish the house, take all the furniture out, and remodel it, right? And so I got into a good books by saying, well, look, we'll help you shift the furniture tomorrow after the memorial service for Dave. And we'll carry it out and put it in these containers. So that'll be really nice. Thank you, Trevor, okay? So the next day, there's this massive dining table, massive. Oh, that's my pride and joy, don't drop it. So we're trying to take it apart, and there's me, a guy called Adam Spring, Chris Collins, get this, and it's really heavy. And just to add a little bit of insult to injury, the week before, I've been playing football. Yes, I know, my age. I've been playing football, and I'd ripped a muscle in the back of my leg. And it was just about okay. So they take the table apart, we've still got the top, and it's a big, massive wooden table. And outside the house, down some stone steps, up some stone steps, into containers. So I'm at the front, Chris Collins at the back, Adam in the middle, and we go out there, I'm like, don't drop this table, whatever we do, don't drop the table. Well, Adam tripped, and the table's going down, I stuck up my leg, and I caught the table with my leg. I saved the day, right? The next day I was going back to New Zealand. I'm walking through the airport, San Francisco, and suddenly, and I couldn't walk. My leg had completely gone. So I managed to get on the plane. It's a long way to New Zealand. I get off at the other end. My wife's waiting for me, and I know I'm old. I looked really old. And I was hobbled off the plane. She said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I've done my leg in with a table." So there. So yes, but it was great staying with RJ and the family. You got to meet so many of the other Amiga developers who came there for a drink and a chat. And what I liked was the camaraderie among them still after what? Then it was 30 years, now it's 40 years.
Well, RJ is one of those people who's on this very fine cusp between genius and insanity. And it depends kind of how he wakes up, I think, which mode he's in. But he is an absolute genius. And as I think often those geniuses are a little bit on the crazy side. But what's interesting, what you just said there, Trevor, is that you can now put on your CV with all validity that you were a table leg.
I was.
Yeah, that's quite nice, isn't it?
It was really good. A crippled table leg, yeah. But there are lots of stories that we know from times. You've got some stories from your time at Commodore when you were trying to chase up where all the money was going. Why don't you tell one of those? They're good.
Yeah, well, actually what happened was that Commodore had, in my opinion, had three major flaws. First of all, as I mentioned, it had no business plan of any kind. You know, they used to just ship products to us that nobody had ever asked for. You know, the Plus 4 was a good example of that. Who the hell wanted a Plus 4? I mean, they were designed to sell at £399. I sold the world's inventory. We bought them all, component parts, assembled them, and they were sold for £99 with 10 cassette games, because that's all they were worth. So no business plan. Second thing is they never had any external auditing. So they believed what every general manager, or in some cases managing director, depending on the company status, they believed everything that they told them. Now, Bernard Van Tienen, who's passed away now, so I don't mind talking about him, he was the general manager of Commodore the Netherlands. And every quarterly management meeting that we went to, we had to report our figures and then get our targets for the next quarter. Every quarter, whether it was in Frankfurt or in London, this Bernard Van Tienen used to brag to us that he was never made his target. So at the last day of the quarter, he would invent invoices, put product on a truck, and send it on a journey for 4 or 5 days. So out at the end of the quarter, and back in again the next quarter. Now, as far as Commodore knows, they were sales, because he'd put it through as a sale, but it wasn't sales. He was obviously cheating the company. So the company did not have that money that they thought they had. But the story that I think Trevor's alluding to is that Colin and I had to go to meet with the Dutch liquidator. There was an IP that we shared between our companies, and he just wanted our opinion on how we handled this IP. Anyway, while we were there, he said, "What do you think of this?" And he pushed a piece of paper across the desk to us. And it was an expenses claim from Bernard Van Tienen. And it was for an establishment called A-EON, which, as I understand at the time, was the most high-profile brothel in Amsterdam. And it was for $375,000. That's a lot of shagging, isn't it? Unbelievable. And just as an adjunct to that, I went to the States in January of 1992. I was sent there. We were at a meeting in Frankfurt, management meeting, and typical. We had the meeting, and I was ready to leave, and then Many Ali says to me, "Right, sit down. He said, "I'm going to grant you one of your wishes." And I said, "Wishes? Which one? I've got lots of wishes." He said, "You keep on telling me that you want to go and sort out the States, because they're really not performing," and they weren't. Terrible. So I said, "Yeah." He said, "Right." He said, "I want you on the 7 o'clock flight out of London, no excuses." He said, "Go upstairs to the admin and tell them that you book you on that 7 o'clock flight out of London." He had completely forgotten that the 7 o'clock flight out of London was Concorde. So I got to fly on Concorde, which is rather nice. Anyway, the story that I want to tell you is that when I actually arrived in Westchester, I went to see the engineers. We had 7 Amiga engineers, who between them, I believe, had 3 or 4 junior engineers that were working with them. We had 40 PC engineers. January of 92, why in God's name would you have 40 PC engineers when everything was coming out of the Far East at tuppence a box? You know what I'm talking about? Anyway, I inherited 3 sales guys and a couple of marketing people. And I said to them, "Right, you're not selling anything in Commodore US. Why aren't you selling anything?" And they said, "We're not allowed to." "What are you talking about? You're not allowed to?" "No, we're not allowed to." "Why?" "We don't know why." So I said, "All right, let's find out." It turns out that the retailers, the major retailers, none of them had paid their bill. They all owed us money, which is an unheard of situation. So I said, "Okay, let's make some appointments." The very first appointment I went to was Sears in Chicago. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. there was about 10 of them around this big boardroom table. Me and then Steve Salas, who was my rep. So I introduced myself and very cordial and all that kind of stuff. And then I said, right, gentlemen, I said, I need to get to the bottom of what's going on because clearly we're not doing any business and we should be doing a lot of business. And I said, it turns out they hadn't paid their bills, so I said, would you mind telling me why you've not paid your bill? And they said, oh, it's easy, Mr. Pleasance. We're waiting for you to take all of our stock back. And I said, well, I've been with Commodore about 9 years and I've never known us to be a lending library. At which point in time, they pushed a piece of paper across the boardroom desk to me, and it was a sale or return agreement signed by Jim Dion, who was the president of Commodore Inc., the man in charge of the sales in the US. Sell or return. Now, guess what he had put into Sears? The product that he put into Sears that they couldn't sell. Have a guess what it was? Yeah, you know the story. Yeah, it was CD TVs. Now, can you imagine Sears selling a CD TV? I mean, they're hard pushed rigging something up on the till and putting in a plastic bag. Never mind about explaining all the qualities of a CD TV. Now, the point I'm trying to make is that Jim Dion had recorded all this. It done into every major retailer, and he recorded it as a sale, got his commission and his bonus, but it wasn't a sale. The money wasn't in the bank. Now, I had to think very, very quickly on my feet because I wasn't expecting that. So I said to the guys, I said, listen, you should never have been sold that product. It's completely wrong profile for your store. I said, what you should be selling is the Amiga 500, which is selling in bucket loads over in Europe, and you should be doing that. I said, I don't want to start my career in the US with a great big negative on my books. So I said, if you give me an order for Amiga 500s to the same value of what I'm taking back from you, I will give you your own Sears pack with your own software, and so it'll be quite unique to you, which is how I did it. I got out of it. And I think in total, from all of the retailers, I think it was somewhere near $750,000 worth of CD TVs that had been out into the retailers and hadn't sold. So can you see why Commodore went bankrupt? I mean, it was built on sand.
Yeah, it's a sad story, and your book explains it quite well. So if you haven't read David's book, it's probably worth reading. I like to look at some of the things that have happened since then. Obviously, we had the celebrations, Amiga 30th. We've got Amiga 40th this year. And when you go to these events, wherever it is, Germany, UK, States, other countries, you do get to meet some of the original Amiga developers. And I've had some quite interesting exchanges with Dave Haney. Dave Haney, one of the original Commodore developers, probably the Amiga 2000, 3000, bit of the 4000. And Dave likes to drink. So if you ever go out with Dave Haney, remember he likes to drink, a lot of drink. And I think the last time we were in Germany, we were in my hotel bedroom with Matthew Lehman, Costel from Hyperion, and Dave Haney. And I'd bought a bottle of whiskey for duty free. Dave didn't leave till all the whiskey was gone. And I had to send him to bed at 4 in the morning because he was asleep on my bed. So yeah, if you get out with Dave Haney, you'll have a great time, and you might drink a drink or two. So you're okay these days?
Yeah, I've stopped drinking, but I can tell you a story about Dave Haney. I went to meet up with him in Philadelphia, and he took me to this microbrewery, and we weren't allowed to leave until we'd had one of every type of beer that they made, and there was a lot. And at the end of the day, I got a taxi back to my hotel, and he got in his car and drove to a music meeting he used to go to. I think it was a Sunday we'd met every Sunday afternoon. He just drove away. I've never seen anything like it in my life. He was that drunk, but he got away with it. But you know, yeah. Hey, that's what the Amiga will do to you.
Yeah. But if you look at the guys that were originally involved, I mean, I start looking back to when I started, funding and building next generation Amigas. And it's been, what, 15 years now, 16 years? Most of those guys were with Commodore for about 2 or 3 years, 4 years at the most. Some of them contracted afterwards. And I think it's a testament to that team, dating back to those days, that 2, 3, 4 year period where they all came together under Amiga and they created something which became, well, why I'm still an Amigan and a few people here I see with Amiga t-shirts. It's amazing that it really has still stood the test of time. 40 years on, my God, 40 years.
Well, I can tell you how big the community is. I recently did an online broadcast with the Amiga group in Uruguay. I mean, I didn't even know they existed, but very big. Now, my book, the first book, the Commodore, The Inside Story, is currently being translated into Latin Spanish in Argentina. There's a museum in Argentina which is working in conjunction with the university there. In fact, they want to translate all 4 books that we've done between us, but they're currently doing the Inside Story, and it's already been published and released in Italy, and of course it's available in Germany as well, in German. It's also recently been translated into Polish, ready for printing, and I'm actually working with somebody in the last couple of days who is probably going to progress that to get it printed. So it's really interesting that when you've got to understand, I never imagined I could write a book. I just didn't, but because I was going around to all of these, this is true, all these events, and telling all the stories, and everybody kept saying to me, you've got to write about it, and so in the end I got sort of harassed into writing the book. So I started to write, and when I'd finished, I really didn't like what I saw, because it was more a story of David Pleasance than it was about Commodore. But then I thought to myself, well, actually, what I've written is what was from my ears and my eyes, so it's got to be that. But I wanted further, so that's why I contacted a lot of different Commodore people. They had to either have worked for Commodore, which most of them did, or been very closely associated with Commodore, and I got them each to write a chapter, and I promised them that I would not edit anything. So if they wrote that Mary Ali was a dickhead or worse, that's what got printed. I didn't change a word. So the fact of the matter is that this inside story is the true story from a lot of different people's perspectives. So you got Dave Haney, R.J. Michael, Beth Richard, Gail Wellington, who sadly passed away the last few days, Dr. Peter Kittle, who was the guy in Germany who did all of the documentation for Commodore. So there's a lot of insights there in the book from different people, which I think is why it's been.
But Dave, the best part of the book, you know the best part of the book, don't you?
No.
It's the foreword.
Oh, right. Yeah. He wrote the foreword. Of course, he's got to say that. We should have said. I should have called it the backward.
No, but it's. I like the book. I think I'm taking credit for you writing the book, that first book, because I interviewed you and Colin Proudfoot for an Amiga Future article, and it ended up going over 2 issues. I think that might have been one of the inspirations, because it was about 4 or 5 months after that. Maybe people had read the article and were pushing you on to write the book. Because I said to you, your stories are funny. He doesn't, to be honest, he didn't tell all the stories in the book. Some of them, I guess, he thought perhaps he shouldn't. But we don't repeat them here.
Well, I just did one.
You just did one, yeah.
I mean, I have to be honest with you. Working for Commodore for 12 and a half years, I have to say I worked for cretins. They were complete imbeciles, and I don't say that lightly. However, I could not wait to get to work every day. I loved every second of it. It was such a cut and thrust business, and we were leading. In the UK, we were leading. There's no question about that. And the great thing about it, of course, is that in those days, it was a cottage industry. Who would have ever guessed that we'd end up being a multi-billion-dollar business, which is what it is now? But in those days, for example, my competitor, probably my biggest competitor, was Sega. Now, Nick Alexander was the MD of Sega UK, and he and I were competitors in the daytime, but we'd have a beer together at night because we knew each other. He wasn't very happy when I put a big sign outside Sega's head office, which said to me, "This good will take Sega ages," was because his president, Tom Kalinske, in an interview in PC Week, when asked about the 32-bit CD-based consoles, he said, and I quote, "It can't be done. If anybody could do it, it would be Sega, and we haven't done it, it can't be done." So that was 3 weeks before we were launching the CD32. Thank you, God, it was amazing. So I didn't think of it, but our agency said, "What about doing this?" And then, honestly, it's a complete fluke. Within that time frame, maybe a week or two later, I got a phone call from this guy, and he said, "David," he said, "I know you won't remember me, but we've done some business together." He said, "We've got poster sites all over the country, and you've used us." He said, "You know how we work. If you book a poster site, you pay 50% up front, and then the week that your poster starts, you pay the other 50%. He said, "I've got 3 prime sites in London that one guy has paid us half the money, and now he doesn't want to go ahead. So if you want them, you can have them for half price. Oh, by the way, one of them's right outside Sega's head office." This was so incredible, the serendipity of it. It was amazing. And so we put that outside his head office. Now, about a week later, we had the industry dinner, which I think we always held in the Gloucester Hotel. And he was there with a few tables, and we were there with a few tables. And he walked over to me, and he was shaking his head. He said, "A bit close to home, Mr. Pleasance, a bit close to home." And I said, "Well, Nick, we're needs must. And that was all that was ever said. But they were seething. They were so angry. But they couldn't do anything about it because it was true. It had been printed by what Tom Kalinske
It is a pity
said.
that no good photographs of that are available. I've seen pictures, but they're all poor quality. I mean, a really good photograph of that would be just priceless.
Yeah. We'll have to see if we can get the one we've got enhanced, because we've got the one that's in the book.
Yeah.
Sorry, we should I keep forgetting to put the microphone up there. No, I said we should maybe get the one we've got enhanced, because the interesting thing is, of course, that we had no internet then, but it went viral. I mean, the whole world was talking about it. It's incredible. We didn't expect that. But the sad thing for me, is that these days, all you programmers, games developers and programmers, you're no longer a person, you're just a number. Because all of the companies that have bought all the good companies out, they just turns you into a productivity machine, and they're going to replace you with AI if they possibly can. But I think that's such a shame, because in the earlier days, we knew everybody. We knew all the developers by name, and we used to go out and have a few beers with them. And it was cottage industry. It was very, very. It was delicious to be involved in that.
Oh, yeah, I still think we've got. I hear you about AI and programming, because the best programmers are using AI now as well to do their initial run through, and then they're using their skills to modify and improve. So yeah, it's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years with AI. I think it's going to change the world. It is changing the world already. It's going to really change the world. I think in my heart of hearts, it should change the world for better. But I know AI will be used for control, for compliance, and to make it worse for us. And for the smart people in this room, and we're all a bit geeky really, aren't we? For the smart people in this room, that's not good. So I'm a little bit worried about that. Although I embrace AI as the benefits of AI, I think are fantastic. I just see the downside, because I think it'll be used for control.
I've got to be honest, I am very, very worried about AI, because I believe that in the hands of the criminals, there's going to be a whole lot of dilemmas. There really, really is. And so I'm worried about that. When the villains get hold of it, God knows what's happened. Because the amount of scamming at the moment is huge, and all in every way. And with AI, it's going to make it even more difficult.
Look, we've only got 2 or 3 minutes left, so any questions at all, we'd love to answer them or try and answer them.
Look, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for attending. I hope you've enjoyed our little soiree. Thank you so much. God bless you. God bless Amiga.
And one last thing, Amiga forever.